Jewish Channel's Week in Review. President Obama starts losing Jewish support on Israel, but loses more on the economy. The cross-cultural Hasidic-owned restaurant you've heard so much about. Carl Palladino and the Orthodox. A man convicted of bank fraud gets the We Are the World treatment. And more of the Jewish news that's changing your world on this episode of the Week in Review. Hello, and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. For the first time, a majority of American Jews don't approve of the Obama administration's handling of the U.S.-Israel relationship. A survey released by the American Jewish Committee this week finds only 49% of American Jews approve of how the administration of President Barack Obama is handling the relationship, compared with 62% approval for the administration of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Through much of the tumult over Israel in the first year of Obama's presidency, Jews maintained a relatively even approval of his administration's handling of U.S.-Israel relations, as well as that of the Netanyahu administration's handling of the relationship. And both the Obama and Netanyahu administrations were essentially in a statistical tie among American Jews on this point, in the semi-annual surveys the American Jewish Committee has been producing. While those numbers held mostly steady in March, we now see a noticeable change over the past 6 months. The Obama administration has lost 6% of its American Jewish approval on the U.S.-Israel relationship in the past 6 months, whereas the Netanyahu administration has gained 5% more American Jewish approval over that time. The distance between Obama's and Netanyahu's American Jewish approval on Israel is now not only statistically significant, but at 13%, a very noticeable gap. And that lack of approval on Israel could be hurting Obama's overall approval among American Jews. In March, we reported on the error many Jewish news outlets made in declaring that there had been a waning of the traditional pro-democratic surplus the president enjoys among American Jews. In March, while the president's approval rating among Jews had diminished significantly alongside the president's overall American approval rating, the president hadn't lost the surplus of American Jewish support he's enjoyed since the beginning of his administration. In March, 16% more American Jews than Americans overall gave the president a positive job approval rating. But in the new numbers, that's changed. The president's approval rating in the past 6 months among Jews has for the first time declined somewhat faster than that of the general public, though not by much. Where 16% more Jews than average Americans approved of the president's job performance in March, that number is now a 13% surplus of Jewish support. And it may be more than Israel that's causing accelerated Jewish disapproval of the president. On the question of the economy, Jews are increasing their disapproval of the president more than twice as fast as the general public. The president's lost 10% of Jewish approval on his handling of the economy in the past 6 months, from 55% approval in March to 45% in September. Among Americans overall, the drop has been only 4%. In a further suggestion, the state of the economy is motivating Jewish opinion. In a separate question, the economy proved to be Jews' top concern for the upcoming November elections, with 87% of Jews saying it's very important, while Israel was tied for 6th among issues of Jewish concern, with 61% of American Jews declaring it a very important issue in the upcoming congressional elections. Other than these two areas of Israel and the economy, most Jewish numbers on Obama, from healthcare to homeland security, have been stable since March. One number that's seen a small shift is approval of the Obama administration's handling of the Iran nuclear issue, with Jewish approval dropping 4 percentage points to 43%. That drop is consistent with a decline in American Jewish optimism for a peaceful solution to the Iranian nuclear situation, which dropped 5% since March. One other interesting change in the past 6 months is an uptick of around 6% in optimism over Arab-Israeli peace. One area where you might see faulty claims about the new survey is on Iran, and specifically American Jewish support for a U.S. or Israeli military action against Iran. Ostensibly, around 6 to 8% more Jews over the past 6 months approve of a military intervention in Iran, but there's no way to know how much of that increase may be due to a change in the wording of the questions. Where the survey used to ask, would you support or oppose the United States taking military action against Iran to prevent it from developing nuclear weapons, that question is now prefaced with a phrase asking about support only, quote, if diplomacy and sanctions fail. Well, if Israel and the United States have been having some difficulty getting along, a new piece of legislation approved by Netanyahu's cabinet probably won't help that situation. A controversial loyalty oath proposal from the right wing of Netanyahu's coalition is drawing criticism. The bill, proposed by Israeli Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman during Israel's 2009 elections, would require all non-Jews seeking citizenship to pledge allegiance to Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. Since relatively few non-Jews apply for Israeli citizenship, it's a largely symbolic issue, but one that critics say could further alienate Israeli Arabs and others, as well as harm Israel's cause in the international sphere and peace negotiations. Before the bill would become law, however, it would need to gain a majority vote in the Knesset. Moving from Avigdor Lieberman to another man on the far right who's making deals with ultra-Orthodox Jews, New York Republican gubernatorial candidate Carl Palladino made perhaps the boldest anti-gay remarks from a candidate in the current election season this weekend. But both the authors and the audience for the remarks were ultra-Orthodox Jews in Brooklyn. Here's what Palladino said.
We must stop pandering to the pornographers and the perverts who seek to target our children and destroy their lives. I didn't march in a gay parade this year. The gay pride parade this year. My opponent did. And that's not the example that we should be showing our children, and certainly not in our schools.
Palladino's speech was written by Rabbi Yehuda Levin, who told the New York Times he dreams of creating an Orthodox Tea Party. In the actual text Palladino was reading from, obtained by Newsday, the Orthodox Jewish character of the speech is in part revealed through use of the abbreviation G/D to refer to God. While Palladino read most of the speech's drafted text and stood by it, there was one portion drafted by the ultra-Orthodox rabbi that Palladino crossed out and skipped over. The part Palladino didn't say is still legible in the draft that the rabbi prepared. There is nothing to be proud of in being a dysfunctional homosexual. That's not how God, here G/D, created us. Condemnations of Palladino and the rabbi have been frequent and swift, and many Republicans are now distancing themselves from Palladino. In another example of ultra-Orthodox boldness that's being met by skepticism from other sectors of the community, a gathering of Orthodox music superstars was formed to create a tribute to a man convicted of bank fraud. Shalom Rubashkin is familiar to many as the executive owner of a kosher slaughterhouse in Iowa that was raided by immigration officials several years ago, resulting in many charges of labor violations that either were dismissed or dropped or led to not guilty verdicts. Rubashkin was found guilty of bank fraud and sentenced to 27 years in prison and is required to provide more than $20 million in restitution. And now this video, in much the style of the famous 1985 We Are the World video from USA for Africa, features heavyweights of Orthodox Jewish music, from Menachem Ben David to Yossi Piamenta to Lipa, singing about unity over images of Shalom Rubashkin smiling. There are dramatic solos, choral arrangements, Jewish rave-style dancing, group swaying, and small children singing. Here's one sample lyric from the original composition about the imprisoned Rubashkin. Eagles soaring by, could you lift him up with you now and fly him home with justice, pride, and freedom? His eyes are gazing wide, from behind the bars he prays now. With faith, with joy, oh how we wait to greet him. The video opens with a message from Rubashkin's wife, Leah.
The silver lining in this whole crazy story has been the amazing unity that has come about because of the story, that people from all different factions have come together in support of Shalom Rubashkin, and this just brings this to another level. Actually, it's the unity of this story that's keeping us going, so we really appreciate it.
You can see the full videos embedded at the Jewish Channel's news blog at newsdesk.tjctv.com. Moving on to a very different story about ultra-Orthodoxy's interaction with the broader world. There's an interesting restaurant trying to bridge the communities of Lubavitch Hasidim and their non-Jewish neighbors that was profiled in the New York Times Magazine this weekend. Rebecca Honig-Friedman stopped by to see what owners and patrons thought and how the notoriety is affecting business.
This certainly isn't your typical kosher pizza, and Basil isn't your typical kosher restaurant.
It feels very trendy.
It's cool, and you can see everyone cooking, and it's clean.
We live right near a ton of kosher restaurants, and nothing has this vibe at all.
It's a good location, so it attracts all kinds of people.
Basil, a kosher pizzeria and wine bar that opened in March at 268 Kingston Avenue, is just down the street from the headquarters of the Chabad Lubavitch Hasidic movement at 770 Eastern Parkway in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. But Basil is on what has traditionally been the West Indian side of Crown Heights, a neighborhood that has sometimes been fraught with racial and socioeconomic tensions, having experienced race riots in the 1990s and now going through the beginnings of gentrification with an influx of young professionals to the area. Basil is hoping to appeal to all of those segments of the Crown Heights community.
We're in a religious establishment and we're trying to integrate Jews with blacks, with Spanish. We're trying to make this truly a godly place for everyone to come and eat here, and that can be difficult.
A recent article about Basil in the New York Times Sunday magazine has helped bring people in. But it also highlighted one of the difficulties in running a restaurant that's both acceptable to Hasidic patrons and attractive to a broader audience. As noted in the article, the agency that gives Basil its kosher certification, the OK, has requested access to the restaurant's security cameras in order to monitor not just the preparation of the food, but the ambiance of the place, including the decorum of its patrons. Rabbi Chaim Fogelman of the OK confirmed by phone that this is a request the agency makes routinely of the restaurants it certifies. But he said they would be especially attentive to the atmosphere of a restaurant in a Hasidic neighborhood like Crown Heights. "We're not there to spy," Rabbi Fogelman said. "We just want to make sure that the decorum stays appropriate for a Hasidic community." For more on this issue, and to see some of Basil's signature dishes, tune in to the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
That's all for this week. For more news and analysis from the Jewish Channel during the week, please check out our blog at newsdesk.tjctv.com. From all of us here at the Jewish Channel, be well. The Jewish Channel is available on cable: IOAPM Cable Channel 291, Time Warner Cable Channel 528, RCN Channel 268, Verizon Fios Channel 900, and Cox Cable Channel 1. For more information, visit tjctv.com.